In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful, and may the peace and blessing of Allah be upon His last and beloved Messenger Muhammad, and may the peace and blessing of Allah be upon you all. The title of this video is How to do physical modeling from the guidance of the Quran. Let me, brothers and sisters, explain this title. Now, in engineering sciences, there is a large need to make physical models, meaning, suppose that a mechanical engineer wants to examine the response of an axle of a car, the member that supports the two wheels. Now, what he does is that he makes a physical model, meaning that he makes a small axle, a small member, and he tests that model in the lab. So he makes a smaller version of the real system, the real design, and he makes certain tests on that model, and hopefully that these tests will reflect the response of the real system. So I hope that now it's clear what's a physical model. It is a smaller design of a real system, and this smaller design is tested with certain conditions to reflect the response of the real system. Now, what I'm saying in this video, how to do this from the guidance of the Quran, how by going to the Quran and reflecting upon the last revelation of Allah God to people, how the Almighty teaches us the best way to accomplish this task, the best way to make physical models. And this testifies the truthfulness of the statement of Allah God Almighty in the Quran, that He did not leave anything out of the Quran, meaning that all branches of knowledge are contained in the Quran. So how to do physical modeling from the Quran? Now, the key to all of this can be found in verse number 21 of chapter 51 of the Quran, which states, "And in your own selves will you not then see," the verse once again, "and in your own selves will you not then see?" So here Allah God Almighty urges us to ponder and reflect upon how He created our bodies, the human body. Now, one of the reasons for this is that if you think about the human body, it contains all kinds of systems. For example, you have a structural system that supports weight, like the bones, and you have an electromagnetic system like the neural and the nervous tissue, and you have fluidic systems like the cardiovascular, the heart and the vessels. So the human body is a textbook in optimal design, because Allah tells us in the Quran that He created the human body in optimal form, meaning that it's in optimal design specifications. So if you want to know how to optimally design any system, whether it's structural, fluidic, electromagnetic system, all that you need to do is to study how Allah created that system in your body, and Allah tells you that it's an optimal state, and thus, as a conclusion, your body is a textbook in optimal design. Now let's apply this in this video, how to know physical modeling from the Noble Quran and from pondering upon our body. Now, as you can see on the screen, we can do this if we think about a comparison between an adult human and a child. Now, if you think about it, the child is a small physical model for the human body. Let me explain this further. Suppose that an engineer wants to study the response of a room, let's say. Now, this room suppose the room is huge in dimensions. What he does, he makes a small model for the room and then subjects to certain forces and sees the response. Now, if you keep that in mind, if you think about it, the child is a small physical model for the human body. You say human for the child, and you say human for an adult. So both are labeled as human. Now, if you think why do you say about a child that he's human? Why? And from the answer for this question, we can know the best way how to do physical modeling, since the child, in an engineering sense, is a physical model for an adult human. Firstly, you say human for a child because he has the same design of an adult. So the first thing that we can learn from the Quran, from pondering upon our body, that the first requirement to do a physical model is that the model and the real system should have similar designs. For example, you want to test a room. The room that you make, the model that you make for the room should have the same design, the same shape and the same design. Suppose that the room, for example, is a cube, you need to make the model a cube as well. The second requirement we learn from the Quran and from our body is that Allah Almighty created the infant, the child, with the same material as the real system, in this case the adult human. So the second requirement in physical modeling, that we need to have the same material. Suppose that, for example, an electrical engineer wants to test certain cables made of copper. Then when he wants to make a model for these cables, he should use copper or a material very similar in response to copper. Now the third requirement we learn from the Quran, that the conditions that the child is subjected to, he experiences heat, humidity, is similar to that of an adult. So the third thing we learn, that the boundary conditions or the conditions that the real system is subjected to should be the same as the model. It should make the same boundary conditions or the same conditions between the model and the real system. The fourth requirement we learn is that we see that, of course, the length of body segments in the child is not the same as an adult, but the relative dimensions are the same. For example, in your arm, the frontal part and the upper part of the arm, you have a ratio of 1:1, the length. In the child, the ratio is the same. It's 1:1. Of course, the length of the whole arm is not the same, but the ratio between this segment and this segment is the same. So we learn that in order to make a physical model, we need to have the same relative dimensions between the model and the real system. For example, suppose that we have a room which is 4 meters in length and 3 meters in width. Somebody who wants to make a model for this room, he wants to make half the size, the model would have the size. So if he makes the length as 2 meters instead of 4 meters in the real system, he should divide the width by 2. So the width should be 1.5 meters. So there should be the same relative dimensions in the model as like the real system. Also, the boundary conditions. Now, suppose that you as a human can lift 30 kilograms, for example. Now the child, he cannot lift 30 kilograms, he can lift a ratio of that. Now this ratio is dependent on the dimensions of the body segments, on the muscles. So there is a relative kind of relative values between the boundary conditions and in the model. So what we're saying here is that there should be kind of a relationship between the length of body segments and the boundary conditions as well, which is the same as in the adult human. Once again, now in the model, if for example you divide the dimensions by half, the boundary conditions should be changed according to this change in the dimensions in order to get a model that would reflect the behavior of the real system. So let me summarize what I'm saying, that we learned from the Quran, by pondering upon the Quran and the human body, 4 main requirements. The best way how to do a physical model. First, that we need to have design similarity. Secondly, we need to have material similarity. And thirdly, we need to have the same boundary conditions. And fourth, we need to have scaling, the same relative dimensions, and the same relative boundary condition between the model and the system. So we see, brothers and sisters, how Allah Almighty is teaching us everything from the Quran. But we see, because the majority of Muslims, they deserted Allah Almighty and they turned away from the Quran, they find themselves in the pain and despair they find themselves into. So the way to be saved is to go to the Quran, read the Quran, ponder upon it, understand it and implement it. That is an advice, brothers and sisters. And to know more details about this topic, please visit my website at www.quran-miracle.com and you can email me at zquran@yahoo.com, and may the peace and blessing of Allah be upon you all.